Yeah.
Okay, you're all set.
Can you see who is iPad 2?
You can ask them the microphone to identify themselves and I can unmute them.
Okay. So I would go ahead and
Okay,
open up the meeting and then we'll see if the person at iPad 2 will identify themselves.
okay. All right, recognizing quorum, the chair opens the March 10th, 2025 meeting of the Community Housing Committee. This meeting is being held in a hybrid model, both in person in the hearing room of Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, and remotely via the virtual computer platform Zoom. Committee members may participate in person or through remote participation pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on June 16, 2021, and extended through March 31, 2025. The information to access this meeting via Zoom was published on the agenda with the town clerk and on the town's website with a minimum 48-hour notice to the public. The public is welcome to attend in person or remotely. This meeting is being recorded.
Did you want to ask who, if the person that's iPad 2 will identify themselves? Gabriel,
Good.
maybe you can allow them to talk?
Who is iPad 2 out there?
Sharon.
Hi,
Sharon.
remember?
Hello.
Hi.
No, I'm from Muck.
Oh, it's Sharon Weimer. Okay, great. All right, well, you know how to raise your hand if you want to speak, okay?
Correct, yep. I'm gonna listen, because you guys always are so smart.
My name again?
You would be Greg.
Thank you.
All right, good. So I'll update you about the guest speaker. You know, I have a lot of affordable housing law.
We do,
Roll call. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, open the meeting, a roll call vote. Greg?
Here.
Drew?
Here.
Myra?
Here.
Lee?
here.
Josh?
Here.
John? Here.
So I've been speaking to a lot of different agencies locally because we have these affordable housing applications available right. And so I talked to this nice gentleman who works for the Mass Department of Developmental Services. And they actually work with residents and match them to affordable units, and they have money to make those units accessible. So I figured, he asked, what do we do for accessibility at affordable housing? And I said, well, we're very interested in what you do. Why don't you come and talk to us? So they're looking for a speaker for either April or May to come and talk to us about their program and how we could maybe partner with them. We do have funds to make improvements to housing in Yarmouth as long as it is affordable to the tenant and the tenant is low mod income. So it's something that we could think about if partner with them, if they have something that they don't have a budget for, maybe we could help them. Maybe they could find us the tenants, but one by one would be improving the accessibility of the affordable units in town. And that was that.
Very good. Okay. Item number under committee business minutes. We have minutes from the January 21st meeting.
I just have a Scrivener's error on page 1, just on a motion by Joan Crowley. It should be Joanne, but.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And I have one typo. On page 4. Mary Wagner. Credit program can be sued to unlock. I think you mean used to unlock.
Mhm.
But that's the only thing I saw.
Thank you.
Okay, can we approve the minutes as amended?
I move we approve these minutes as amended by the.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, Greg,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Myra,
Aye.
John, yes?
Yes, Levy, yes.
And John.
Aye.
Okay, Muck Housing update.
Okay, so staff met with Barrett Planning last week and went over all the comments from Muck One, how everybody spoke about prioritizing their ideas in Muck Two. And so Barrett Planning weighted those responses. So you know how they kind of said, well, what's your first, second, and third choice? So if you said, if you said veterans housing was your first choice, that got 3 points, right? Rental housing was your next one, that got 2 points. A habitat development, third, that got 1 point. So they did this, and they're trying to weigh out the top three. Knowing that they didn't quite give you that scale ahead of time, they did kind of listen to how passionate people were and how engaged the community was on something. So for example, Forest Road, right? So they picked up that that was something that's been spoken about for a while in town. So what I think you're going to see is something that is their main idea they're going to bring you, I think, is going to be something that has mixed uses. Leaving what those other uses are up to other groups, right? Whether it's going to be purely commercial or municipal or a mix of that. They're still kind of, thinking about it, but they think that the big thing that should come out of this group is that it's housing, right?
Mhm.
And that they heard housing diversity an awful lot. They used senior friendly. We use those words, senior friendly, an awful lot. Don't be afraid of having homeownership and rental together. And they, in lieu of saying like veteran housing, they might use the term supportive housing
Yes, that's good.
for a community partner that
Yeah.
does things like helps veterans or
Mhm.
disabled or elderly, you know what I mean? So I think that's where we're gonna go. It's that they're definitely gonna say something like, yes, they're gonna ask you, you definitely want housing here. You guys are gonna have to say yes.
Yes,
you
yes,
definitely
yes.
want housing. And then kind of talk about this kind of your vision for it.
So if my suggestion was joint housing with habitat and affordable and mixed housing, mixed rental housing, that didn't go as number 3?
I
That one-
think that's they're gonna talk about at the next meeting.
Okay,
And knowing them, you're gonna get like a big chart with everything in there.
so when you say staff, who is the staff besides
So
the,
that's me, Karen Green, who's the Director of Community
Okay.
Development. Kathy Williams, who's the town planner. Myself. We always invite Robert Rittenauer as our town administrator and Bill Scott, who's the assistant town administrator, but I call him the muck minister. So he's done so much work on this. We've been inviting him
okay,
just to kind of help the consultant kind of if they have any questions, need to interpret something, needs a little bit more feedback about what staff sees as policy of the town.
He seems to have a lot of insight into a lot of different things, so I think
Yeah.
it's good that
He's
he's
smart.
Yeah.
Any landmines out there, give them a heads up. But we have, that meeting is on March 17th at 2.
2.
2 o'clock. It's an hour before our normal time. And, you know, if you still need more time, we've got plenty of time. We're ahead of the game.
I think earlier is better on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I think so too.
So two questions. Have they finalized the report on the conditions of the building? Excuse me.
Yes, and John, I have not read it. I think John asked for a copy. I don't know if you.
I haven't read it yet. I've been doing some other.
Do we all
consulting.
get a copy of that?
Yes,
Okay,
and I have one printed out on my desk, Lee, if you want to come.
okay.
I think that converting the classrooms, and that was Palm's not here, but that was Palm's idea. Now Palm missed a couple of meetings,
Right.
right? So I don't think she caught that explanation of how expensive that
Right,
is, right?
Right.
But that's what they're showing is in this report is that the condition of the classrooms, that portions of the building it would just be very expensive
Right.
to remodel as individual units, because they're just not, the material that used is not conducive to running
Right.
facilities into individual units, making
No
individual.
plumbing in classrooms either. so
Right.
Yeah, and for those of us who have been around at the meetings, we were aware of that. So I don't think anybody recommended converting in this committee.
Right. See,
th-
that was
those
my
present-
original idea. I was like, oh, just.
Yeah, no, we were aware of that.
Yeah, so that's probably gonna go away, but I have to say, I would have to say about 50% of the people who are talking about the gym and the auditorium are passionately for
yeah.
keeping it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very clear from all the,
Do
yeah,
we have any feedback from any of the other groups that are looking at this, like recreation? I think the library committee was looking at it as well, or something like that.
Right, in the Park and Rec and finance.
I can see what's available. I don't know, Sharon, if you're willing to help me out with that question.
I had a second question, but I don't remember what it was.
But I can, people aren't as far along as you are. See, that's.
Right,
the
right.
thing.
We're like one step ahead of most of the other
Yeah.
um
I mean,
departments.
we can say this is our recommendation, but we want to see what other people are saying.
Right.
We can say that. Um,
Well, within some of what we talked about, other than going off to other areas, which I think that's in the reign of other groups. I think we had some creative ideas, but we're about housing. I think we had some good ideas, like, I think Rittenauer, is that his name?
yeah, Bob right now.
Bob was concerned about the solar panels on the ground, how much room they take. So there was discussion of those can go on the roofs of some of the buildings, or it can be raised up so there's parking underneath. And I've asked the question, who benefits from the solar panels? And I never got an answer to that.
I think the town would be selling the energy.
I think Lee means who's benefiting from it now, right?
Oh, the school.
Is it the school? Yeah,
It was the
I
school.
would assume it's the school.
Yep, it's the school.
Okay, so it's nobody
The
now.
Elementary school there.
No, they're still getting that.
The elementary school, right, I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
they're still getting that payment. That was land under their control.
Okay.
And I believe that contract is up 27,
Yeah,
May 27.
sounds good. So, that's one thing. I'll give them that feedback. You'd like to know a little bit about what's going on with the other.
I think one thing that was mentioned at the last meeting, and I don't remember if they said it was the finance committee, but to me, it should have gone under Park and Rec, was creating a sports center. You remember that?
Oh,
being
that
mentioned?
is here's the muck master right now. That is a huge idea.
We're just
is
talking
to
about 'em.
make it a commercial venture with professional or
Right.
semi-professional competitions and
And who did that come from? What group did the group that come from?
that's always been kind of from the chamber. That hasn't been hi Bill, you can come in if you want.
Need for anything from Muck, do you, or?
Yeah, we were just talking about muck and we're wondering
meeting.
A lot of compliments.
things. Oh yeah, tons of compliments. So Bill Scott is our assistant town administrator, so he's coming in to sit down at a very opportune time and join us. So we had two questions about the larger muck program.
Right.
One, kind of like what are all the other silos tending towards? And two, where does this idea of having a large competitive sports arena, where is that coming from? And is that going to be really feasible?
A little bit from the, I mean, I think a little bit from the chamber, and I've seen some of it from recreation. So as far as your muck around or brainstorming tables or responses, we're putting those in the tables and we're going to post them all online. So everybody, all the committees can see each other's work. And I don't think that the sports facility is as big as, I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, it's what you can fit on the site. So the idea behind each different topical area providing guidance is, as we know, we have a lot of water supply protection land, and then we have 28 and the commercial constraints that happen there. So what we want to do is, can this site support affordable housing? And then so as each group comes together, then we start saying, how do we fit these pieces of this puzzle? So recreation might come in and say, we need fields, and then other business people might say, well, we need maybe some sort of sports complex. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They can sort of coexist together. So, you know, it's about how much we can fit on it. What we didn't want to do is basically pick an idea and then run with it and then have everybody else say, what about us? So by front loading with this public input process through the committees, you're more knowledgeable about housing than a lot of other people. Chamber and CDC is more knowledgeable about economic development. Recreation Commission, you know, recreation needs. So you're each coming together and saying, here's what we want to do here. Then the last part of it is you provide an idea that is either elevated or moderate. So you may come in and say, here's how many units at the elevated, here's how many units at the moderate, and then we start mixing and matching the land uses. So
Okay, so it's not just one grand idea. It's
No.
like one idea with everything we want, like the highest level, and then kind of like the reduced level.
well, it could be, and then, so if you provide two and it's decided that across the board, everybody's going to the moderate because we want to entertain all of those, or it could be that, you know, we see, you know, elevated in one area and moderate in another, but, and then the school department's approach to this is they won't be doing their feasibility study for some time. December, actually, they started. So we have to deliver 3 proposals to the Board of Selectmen, 3 alternatives. One of those will carve out a section of the site of 8 acres, 8 to 10 acres for a school. And then we're just going to leave it at that and then try to plan around that. But, you know, the fact is this is both collaboration and competition.
So that 8 to 10 acres may or may not wind up being used for a school eventually. I
So
see.
we'll have 3 proposals and it may be, well, this one's more toward housing. This one's more toward the commercial side. This one has a school in it. And then by virtue of that, then the community puts it together and says, okay, we like the combination of these 2, this one, you know, things like that. And, you know, typically you would hire a consultant and give it to committee, and then the committee would run off and say, this is what we think we want to put together. And then you go through a whole bunch of host of meetings that, you know, the public is engaged. We still are at that point where we're going to do that. But starting with you, starting with CDC, starting with the chamber, starting with all these groups means that you're going to be educating the muck group to say, okay, here's all the, I mean, think of the potential. We're getting lists where people are coming around with 15 brainstorming ideas that get down to 3, that get down to 1 and 2 levels. So they ostensibly have got 6 committees out there, you know, with, you know, 12 ideas total, you know. So it's a great way to start because except for Barrett, we're not putting a lot of money into just talking amongst ourselves.
Mhm.
And I mean,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Lee.
Question, So when will the information from the other groups be available online?
Actually, I'm just getting some of them back, so I'll probably have that up by Wednesday.
Okay. thank
And
you.
then the Muck website is going to have a new section called, meeting results or something like that.
I didn't
and
know
I'm
there was a
trying to
Muck
get the bid-
website.
If you Google, Yarmouth, Matakees, utilization
Maybe I looked at that one back.
project. And I can send you the link, but
Okay.
it comes up and it has, you'll see all the stuff you've been presented at these meetings, like remember the base map, the context map.
In the
Yeah,
Teams
yeah.
memo and all that, yeah.
I have one other question, if I may,
Yep,
sorry.
sure,
The elementary school,
correct,
if
yeah.
8 acres is going to be reserved for the elementary school, my understanding is that if they stay on that site and don't move to the other school and there are issues with them moving to the other location, then they would have to stay in that school until a new school is built, correct? Because they can't
Correct.
be schoolless, they
that-
can't be buildingless.
That does put a sort of
Delay
crimp
or
in
a-
the sequence.
Right, right.
So that if you were to build, if I were to say that we would get a grant for sewer, housing is usually the leader for grants.
Right.
I mean, it's difficult to look at a sports complex and say, give me a grant for sewer. That's a little bit more competitive. Housing, there's a direct link between, let's say, 40R and MassWorks grants.
Okay.
So it is usually the driver to get you the offsite improvements. So the problem, you're right. I mean, they would stay in that school, build another one, and then tear that school down and possibly make room for something else, whatever it might be.
So a
Housing.
proposal could say to build on the site where the school is now, once it's torn down, but that could be a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the whole sort of cost benefit analysis we need to look at, which is, and not only that, they, even if they were to move somewhere else, they're still going to stay there until somewhere else is built.
I understand that.
Yeah, so,
So one of the options that may come out of this is not having the school there at all.
well, I think that's going to be up to the public and the elected officials, but yeah, I mean, there's three options and one of them is going to contain a school.
Yeah.
And, but if you look at it, actually to Lee's point, in terms of that sequence, is it more effective to, basically understand that they're going to be moving somewhere else, and by virtue of that, they can stay there, but it means you can build.
Yeah,
in
you
the
can,
shadow
you
of
can
where they were
phase
gonna
in
be, yeah.
something for that land use later on.
Yeah, the difficulty, if they stay there, that they have the school site occupied plus the parcel that you would designate for them, because you want to build on that parcel before you move the kids out of the other one.
Right.
If they go somewhere else, you don't have that parcel that they're going to build to, which means that you can develop that.
Right, right.
So that's really the issue. And once you get all these ideas together, you start seeing, oh, wait a minute, the dominoes aren't going to fall very well if this is one of them. So how do we approach that? Because from a project management perspective, you want the offsite money in as quickly as possible right up front. And it's usually housing that does that. You can get money for an economic development proposal, but the housing, there's direct target grants for that. There's a housing MassWorks now. So I've done some housing stuff and we always get grants for intersection work or sewers or whatever. So as all these things collide, you're right, you're asking these questions about, okay, if the school stays there, where do we build our housing? So you're going to come up with a proposal and that proposal is going to say, we want this type of development. Now we got to figure out how is it going to fit in with the other ones. And it's better that we sort of front load and have these dialogues, that eventually what we might be doing is eliminating the RFP process and creating more of a, you came in with your proposals and the narrative. Now let's get the different committees to talk to each other and say, what were you thinking? And then have that done in front of Muck and then move on, because the RFP, it seems like it's too definitive on more of a conceptual level approach. So we have, after your single idea with the two levels, is we had an RFP process where you'd answer more questions. I think it's best we have that in a dialogue where some of these issues of if you don't move, how do we build our housing? And so we can get some of those answers if we put maybe 3 people from this committee, 3 from another, and all in a room with the muck people, and then hammer those issues out and in front of the public. So one of the things that our consultant is looking at is maybe a charrette and sort of focus groups that open it up to the public. Charrette being they'll just do a quick design exercise.
We did have some attenders at our last muck meeting because some of their feedback is in our minutes.
Yeah,
We
It-
had maybe 4 or 5
I
people.
think that was good to take their comments too.
Mhm. One person said didn't want housing, so.
Oh,
I
Yeah,
like that idea of having a charrette because now I'm starting to be like, oh, because remember we were talking about a development with the plaza? Was it you, John, that was talking to me? Or was it you? About a development always should have like a plaza.
Oh,
or
that's, I went
central.
to school for landscape architecture. The person from Venezuela. And we were designing a condo complex as one of our exercises, and all she talked about was where they're going to gather. Typical, in the US design for condos, here's a parking lot, here's a trail, there's the condos. She said, well, we can shape the buildings to formulate a plaza and people can gather, which in Venezuela and South America is more common. And so it was a great idea, but that's the point is this group talked
Yeah.
about the sort of open space merging with the housing.
Right,
And that happens with sort of a plaza. You go from the private space to the semi-private space, the plaza, to then the public space, which is the rest of the site. And so
okay.
those are the design elements we would think about as you're moving forward. So you give us the concept and then our consultants are supposed to turn that into a reality and figure out how to put it on the site. What we didn't want to do is, as I said, hire the consultant, have the muck team go through, iterations of plans, then just spend the next few years, people coming up to the podium and say, I think you should do this, I think you should do that, but not that, but then this. So by you giving us the ideas means that upfront, we have some direction.
I think the charrette would be a great idea.
Yeah. And so,
Through a lot of issues in a short period of time with it.
Right. right. And not only that, if you give us your singular idea on 2 levels, what we're doing is, as Lee pointed out, is actually we're finding conflicts. So we're
But you're finding what?
conflicts, between the school project being there and moving forward, or the school project not being there or whatever, and the sports facility and things like that. So I think that, again, housing is a very difficult thing to locate in town. Because if you look at all our water supply protection and other protected lands and developed lands, there's not a lot left. So,
I am concerned with the push sort of to move the forest road development to this property because they've got property there, even though I know this conflict. I was at the meeting where
right,
all the abutters got up and spoke at great length. But to take this land and bring the housing authority development over there,
it loses the opportunity to have both.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that what you need there is some more definitive sort of, do we want to entertain this? Because it'd be unfortunate for you to basically, Drew, you're on that group, the housing
Yes.
authority, yeah, and to basically sort of move ahead with that and not have this sort of meeting of the minds with the Board of Selectmen and the Housing Authority and whether or not we should consider it. Because sometimes you get ahead of yourself and saying we should consider this, and all of a sudden, each party outside your group is railing it in, saying we never talked about that. So we really need to, what you're proposing as groups outside the Housing Authority is completely valid for your entity. What you're proposing from the Housing Authority perspective really needs to be vetted at the sort of the political levels.
Right.
So we don't, raise people's expectations, when they can't be done. Because there's a whole state agreements you have and other things that
right.
need to be vetted before you can really make too much of a commitment. Because, you know, in planning, one of the things that happens is somebody whispers an idea and then suddenly the backhoe is idling outside the site. and Everybody thinks it's happening.
Mhm.
So we got to be careful about if we move forward, we do it methodically, but not only that, do it with enough clarity to say, yes, we've talked to this entity and they're willing to consider it. You know, so, but I think that the great thing is you've all been involved in housing. Now you're getting a chance to sort of practice that on the
Because some of the
ground.
politics.
Yeah, yeah, beyond the HPP and all the planning documents and all the policy you're setting, you're actually getting to say, let's do this. And that's, and CDC, Chamber, you know, Recreation are all sort of just as excited. It's like, oh, we get to play with this site, you know, and,
Mhm.
but it's more than that. And I think what's happening is once you see the other ideas up there, you'll start seeing synergy across, you know, a lot of groups. And eventually that's what happens. That's how you arrive at the plan, when you see commonality between your ideas. So it's lucky I kept my cameras and microphone off in my office to watch them. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, so I'm very eager to see not only what recreation and the chamber wants, but the wetlands and habitat advocates in
Mhm.
town. I think they can increase their buffers in some places, so that's exciting.
Yeah, we're already seeing that the wells typically by law, zone 1 is 400-foot radius. We're going to use 1,000 feet. And it doesn't go into the site. There's only 2 areas in the
Right.
top of the site where it goes into, but there's 7 wells around there. So we anticipate a recommendation is anything that you do that has, you know, a lot of participants or occupants, it's going to need a sewer line. So we're going to demand that.
Keep interrupting you, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
The schoolrooms, the school part of their construction, we're all in agreement that that really can't be converted into housing. Is that?
The
could that-
Mattakey School or the other one? Yeah.
But the,
Keys.
Yeah, yeah. So we do have a consultant looking at the cost if it was residential. And I have another consultant looking at the demo cost.
right.
But as I said, I think I said at one of the meetings, residential is the hardest redevelopment cost because of all the individual runs of utilities to each unit and separating that. So it's the most costly. And if you had this with an ocean view and a great location, I'd say maybe you could float some really high-end condos in there. But the startup cost to get the unit up to a place where it could be cost-effective might be difficult because the tunnels underneath are all concrete, the floors are concrete, the ceilings are concrete. There's materials in there that you have to remove ahead of time.
And do you see that as being demolished then? Or,
Well, I'm not going to open the envelope before the award ceremony, but I think that it might be cheaper to do that and build new than it would be new, being that if you were to put something there of a commercial or a housing nature, that it's probably going to be cheaper to build it than it is to retrofit that. If you were to tell me Town Hall was going to move there and a few other office-like entities, then maybe it would be worth it. You know,
Mhm.
but what that does is it puts us in a position where we have to care for a building that big.
Mhm.
One of our goals in the background, and not to sort of put a, you know, sort of limit on people's ideas, is the cost effectiveness of how much town money is going to go into this and limiting that to the greatest extent possible. Because I mean, with the sewer line, with, you know, PFAS, with the library, you know, and all the other demands the town has, we need to figure out how to get on the positive side of the ledger sheet with this thing. And that means somebody else's money and things like that. So as we plan, if we say, you know, if we only did it this way, we could get that grant money, that's what we're going to do. So your idea gets turned into a financing plan along with that. And we might come back to you and say, you know, if you went with this program or that program, there's more revenue involved. So we'll go back and forth with the different groups to be able to do that.
thank you.
Welcome.
That was great.
Thank you for
Yeah,
wandering
muck.
by.
Oh,
For stopping by.
I heard muck, no. Stairs.
Probably in your sleep.
Yes, yes, but thank you, and thank you, everybody. for
Thank
your,
you.
You know, your guidance in terms of the ideas you have, and as I said, by Wednesday, I'm hoping to have everybody else's stuff up. The municipal facilities one, we haven't started yet. That's pretty much department heads. And we wanted to wait for everybody to speak, just in case people had ideas about that we would then include in that group. So, but we're probably just gonna go to brainstorming with that. Because if we go any further, then it's making assumptions that only the Board of Selectmen have the right to do. You know, what do you do with a municipal facility?
Mhm.
So we're gonna list all the sort of potentials. So if one group comes up with something and says, wouldn't it be nice that the library could provide this service? Maybe that, you know, then we'll have if the library's there or something else, but it's not an indication that's what we're gonna do. It's an indication that there could be a mix and match with some of those uses. So, all right,
Thank you.
great, thanks.
Very much.
Um,
You.
Can you remind me of the different groups? 'Cause
Yeah,
Park and
there's
Rec-
6. There's the municipal group, which she just spoke
Right.
about, right? There's housing,
Right.
economic development, recreation. Water and natural, like wetlands, natural resource. And I'm stumped.
Did our video get interrupted?
It's still recording, but the broadcaster, there's some technical difficulties. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it too.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
So Matakees
Zoom
utilization.
is still up.
Thank you. This is
Speaking
one.
of Zoom, Mary, is this our last Zoom meeting?
I don't know, I have
Watching
to
at the end
ask.
of the month?
So
Yeah, the
we-
law expires at the end of the month, but
Yeah.
I don't think that means we cannot have further Zoom meetings. We're just not required to.
Right.
Well, since we have
Be
some
good to
committee
continue
members that
them.
live.
So
May-
we can, you as committee members can participate remotely. Okay? What part of that law said was that you don't have to have a physical quorum. So you could, before COVID, you could always participate remotely, as long as you had a quorum physically at the meeting spot. So that's what's gonna be, for me, the big change is I need 4 of you here in the room so that the meeting can be opened, and then people can still Zoom in. Yeah. I have a feeling that people like it, so I think we're always gonna have that component. And our AV crew knows how to do it, so.
Plus, we have some people who are a distance.
What I like is when one of you goes, oh, I have a cold, I'm zooming in. I'm like, thank you. Okay, so,
Which is what I did.
right, so municipal services, housing, economic development, recreation, open space and water. Just because you said there's 7 wells, right? So that was very specific. That was going to be the environmental component, conservation. And then the 6th one is education, which is the school. And remember that we're getting more information from the police department too. Where they're putting their training facility and their trailer and all of that, that's kind of impacting where the Matakees school buildings are. And it's also where when you look at the map, that natural heritage, the habitat is kind of dipping down and could come further. You know what I mean? You might see those classrooms being demolished and that habitat being restored. Because the police training center, they don't want people kind of on recreational fields really close by.
I've been in there. Yeah, it's not a thing you want kids to see probably, or,
Yeah.
it's,
But
they
they're
do a
on the
lot
other
of
side
pretty,
the Property, they're not.
They're
Well, the
behind
schools-
the police station now, right?
Yeah, so it's, they can have activities and trainings on weekends, at night, sometimes they have to do things at night. They were like, you don't want to put your housing really
No,
close to
no.
that because people will be disturbed. It's not so much that they're unsafe, it'll be disturbing.
Mhm.
So, we have to see, just like
Oh,
other
it's
parts,
safe, not safe.
it's very, very quiet. So whatever they do, everybody's gonna hear, you know what I mean? It's just, it's super quiet down there. I don't know, it might have
Yeah.
been. But I think that's good. So, right, so one idea at elevated and a medium level. And then I kind of like that idea of a charrette rather than them issuing an RFP and us responding to it formally. With our idea is kind of getting everybody together and kind of trying to negotiate something that fits really well on the site.
New business,
Is none.
Yay.
reports and action, chair's report, I don't have anything. Home consortium,
home consortium, our last meeting, Mary, was there. There was a long presentation by the Barrett folks about the end of the pilot program, I think, Mary, is at the end of June that it's all over.
Yeah.
And they were hoping that all the towns would have their recommendations by the end of last month.
Yeah.
As far as how they wanted to move forward, that they had three, we've discussed this in the past, three different categories of, depending on how many towns decided to still participate, what the cost level would be. I'm guessing we'll find out more about that in next week's meeting, or this week's meeting, I think. I think it's Thursday morning, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's next Thursday.
There's at least six, maybe 6.5.
6.5 towns.
Yeah.
So that's like right, like
So-
almost right down the middle, right?
So Mashpee has to convene the Affordable Housing Trust. And they don't meet like we do. It's their Board of Selectmen. So when the Board of Selectmen have time to fit in a trust meeting, they will. So Mashpee, I think, is on board, but they're gonna have to schedule a meeting to allocate the funds.
I kind of had a feeling it would be towards the middle of the pack of,
Yeah.
there's 15 towns, right? So
Right.
6.5 is pretty close to half.
And we'll continue to use it because of Matakes. So it's worth it to us. Because we already have a planning project for us to use all our hours. What
And-
happens is sometimes you subscribe to something like this and you don't end up using all the hours. So it's like, but you definitely use all the hours.
And Alexis knows her stuff, which you deal with her a lot more than I do. She's pretty sharp. One other thing I wanted to mention that morning, there was a survey on, I think it was the Cape Cod Times or CapeCod.com that the Cape Cod Commission put out asking the community what they thought was needed on the Cape as far as housing goes. So in the previous meeting, they did not mention that survey would go out. So I took the survey. It only took a few minutes. I love surveys anyway. So, and it was pretty interesting. So we'll see how that shakes out too.
So could you remind me of what the Home Consortium got some federal money? Correct? And the goal was to
So
coordinate-
Lee, I'm still trying to kind of figure it out myself. I remember when I signed up, the woman upstairs goes, what is this? I said, I don't know, I'm gonna find out, apparently. So I think it's the Cape Cod Commission. It lets everybody from each town have a representative. It's mostly kind of a roundtable discussion.
Normally, it's an entitlement program from US HUD.
Yeah,
So normally, I don't know, we get like $300,000 to $500,000 a year for affordable housing developments on the Cape. And typically they limit that award, and you correct me, Josh, if I'm wrong, to about $150,000 per development.
Hmm.
So when you're talking about developments that are, $12 million, the $150,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but the developers go for it. Cause it's cash in hand. They don't have to pay that back. That's a grant. So, so there's an annual entitlement in the home consortium. They're the body that votes to award the funds.
I know that history.
Okay.
But didn't they get some additional funding that they were trying to coordinate
I think they got, I think it,
regional planning? around
ARPA
housing?
funding.
They get
yeah, and
ARPA money,
and
but I'm not,
it came
that
up,
might be on hold because of the, Build America, Buy American.
yes, so that was like
Uh,
3 or 4 meetings back.
Okay.
They have, don't hold me to this, I think $600,000, but they can't really do anything with it until they got the buyback, Buy American buyback, I think it BABA. I think
Build
was the
America,
exact-
Buy American.
Yeah,
You
but they say they have to kind
use
of figure out all,
America
how all those
to build the-
mechanisms are gonna work before they can actually start spending money.
Okay.
Because they need to buy American products in order to, I think the developers are also having a tough time trying to find, okay, can I get plywood here, or I can't get it from Canada or Mexico or China?
Having a
So
lot of
it's kind of, the money's a little bit tied up right now. But I'm glad you mentioned that. You made me think that survey actually was so the commission would have public feedback on how the home consortium should spend the money once they can.
But the Cape Cod Commission used to run the home consortium.
Well,
And
they
now
still-
now it's under the the Barnstable County Department of Human Services. They gave it up. And the yeah.
That's
Yeah,
not
they
ever
did.
come up
That's
in
the
any
history.
meetings.
I've
I'm
been
not aware of
around
that.
since that history.
Okay.
And the Cape Cod Commission didn't have a housing specialist person on staff for a very long time.
I believe they do, actually,
do
they,
now.
They do now, but it was a
well,
long time.
so don't hold me to this. The last time I checked their website, maybe 3 months ago, and the position was not listed. I checked it again a couple weeks ago. I think it was listed again, so I don't know if they
Yeah,
lost
but
that
it was
person.
very interesting because you let us know that people have been asking them questions. And they,
Well, they came and did a presentation to us, and I used to work with I used to work with them regularly, and in fact, I got a grant from Duffy that they oversaw to do a study of homeless individuals, to do a cost-benefit analysis. And Paul Vashinskas was the head of the housing specialist there. And I think when Paul left, I don't think they ever really replaced him, and that's been quite a while.
According to the survey, what it said was, the survey was put together by the Cape Cod Commission. And it was how they were going to decide how the home consortium would spend money once they could do it, depending on what the public thought was a priority.
Well, I'm confused.
Yeah, I am too.
I'm even more confused now because they let go of the control of that. But I don't know. But I thought the home consortium got this big pocket of federal money, and their job was to try to coordinate regional planning.
I'm not
It's
sure,
Patty
I'm
Daly.
not sure the commission
Patty Daly
is
has been
giving up
assigned
too
affordable
much
housing.
authority over too
commission?
many things.
yeah, Patty Daly has been assigned. It's my understanding. It's Patty Daly. Because we asked, who at the commission do we talk to if we have a question about affordable housing? And they said Patty Daly. That survey is from the home consortium itself.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're doing
It
their
had not
5-year
been brought
plan.
up in any previous meetings, and I've been to all of the meetings. I was kind of surprised when I saw that.
And I know a whole bunch of ARPA, bipartisan infrastructure law, and BABA funding is on hold right now because of various executive orders while they're being reviewed. So that stuff might be on hold for the moment.
Be interesting to see what happens with all the renewals in the HUD continuum of care application.
Hmm.
They just were renewed for 2 years last year. But, that would be a whole lot of people out in the street.
Yarmouth Housing Authority.
It meets tomorrow afternoon, and we're going to vote on the completely corrected and finalized RFP that we're going to see if anyone responds to, any developers who might want to develop that property on Forest Road. And that's the story.
So I looked at that RFP. That looks like something that POA would.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
What is
that's right
that?
up their alley.
What's POA?
Affordable.
Preservation of affordable housing, yeah. They're a nationwide company, but they have a big presence here on Cape. Founders Court, Cromwell Court, yeah, they like 12 different properties on the
KP
Cape.
Way, which I believe is like 99% ready to go and born.
Yeah.
Yep, they're a low income housing tax credit, affordable housing developer.
Right,
They-
I
they-
see.
They build them.
So they'll
That's exactly
probably
what-
review it.
We're looking
Yeah,
for.
and yeah.
Hopefully Dakota Partners that,
They've got
yeah.
3 or 4 places on the Cape already, right?
And Dakota.
You
did
said
the-
12?
They've got more than 3 or 4. They've got
I
like
mean, on the
yeah.
Cape though, right? I mean,
They have like 12 on.
oh,
Cape.
real on the Cape, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I thought you said.
They've got 4 in Hyannis alone.
Oh,
so.
really? Okay.
so, yeah, and, you know, Yarmouth Commons was done by Dakota Partners. Yarmouth Gardens, Commonwealth Community Developers. So they, you know, it all goes on the COMBI, it all goes on the state's bidding system. So they'll all see it.
Mhm.
Probably goes into the central register too.
Yeah, it does.
Goes on the site. So they all get subscriptions to that
Right.
public notification.
So that will be on the, assuming everything goes as planned, that will soon be on the central register.
When will be the deadline for applications? You're determining that?
Yeah, that's on the,
I didn't write it down.
that's on the final
Okay.
RFP we're voting on. Within the whole thing is in April and May, you know.
Yeah, because it's so valuable, that land is so valuable, people will have plenty of time. I'm
Mm.
sure it's like 6 weeks to
Approximately 6
respond.
weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
5, maybe 5, yeah.
Thank you, Drew.
Yep.
Affordable Housing Trust?
So our next meeting is February 18th. You'll meet with them on the 17th at 2:00. Oh, sorry, March. March 17th. Yeah, you'll meet with them with the MUC 3. Then their next meeting, the trust next meeting is March 18th. My office is working with somebody who wants to buy land on Route 28 and convert it to housing. I said, how about mixed use? So it's going to be, the 18th is going to be a really interesting meeting because the trust has an RFP out for $500,000 to acquire property for the development of affordable housing. So it's kind of like, you know, is this group far enough along to go forward with that, or should they use some of that Grayfield money to design it first? So we'll see.
So the project you just spoke about, that would be some blighted property, Grayfield property? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So gear up.
So you can't tell us?
I'd rather not.
Okay.
Don't press me.
All right.
Don't press me.
Bring out the-
I want to get the conceptual plans done so everybody's wowed by them first.
So their meeting is the 18th and
Yeah.
the MUC meeting is the
The
17th.
day before, yeah. So we'll all be together on the 17th. Yep, that's it for the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yep, Planning Board?
Planning Board, do you want to come up and say hi? And use the mic?
I don't really.
He's gonna come out. Yeah, come up and just, you know, introduce
you
your
have-
name, introduce yourself a little bit.
Mellifluous fashion.
We can grill you for a while.
Nothing to say.
No, we'll be just.
I've just joined the planning board and I'm just not officially joined you yet. But basically the most recent meeting, most of the discussion was about the comprehensive plan that everybody's working very hard to get together and about the state changes to the ADU rules after the planning board had just
Right.
spent a lot of time on putting the town together, the town's rules together. So those were the main topics of discussion that I remember, and I did not prepare. I did not review any notes before I came here. So
Okay.
I don't know if,
You're going to be held accountable for this.
Deirdre Gaquin.
Deirdre Gayquin. So she's gonna, the process, the planning board reorganizes and then they send their chart of who's gonna represent the planning board on different committees. And then I think the select board then, blesses that with a vote of appointment.
Right.
So that's where we are.
And
Oh, right.
I got it down pat after 20 years.
so that was discussed at the meeting and decided that with the exception of me replacing Joanne on this committee, everybody's staying put until September, which is the time they
Okay.
typically redo the assignments.
It's pretty
So
So I hope you join us on March 17th.
I'm planning to come on March
at 2,
17th.
and I think you should just grab a seat at the table
Okay,
with, whether Joanne is here or not.
Well, Joanne also serves in the Community Preservation Committee.
Right.
That's
and
right,
it's
she
an
does.
awful lot.
That is a lot.
It's a lot.
and that was, she
Planning
had
board,
been doing double
CPC,
duty
yeah.
because they didn't have a 7th member.
Okay.
So by my joining them, that relieved her of one of 2, and that's the
welcome.
decision that was made.
Yeah. Well,
Remind me, do you have a background in planning?
I have a master's in urban planning.
Yep.
But most of my life I've spent processing statistical data. I became an expert on census data and other federal databases. And so I've actually had, 50 or 60 books published of huge compilations of county and town and
for
city
Census
data.
Bureau reports. I used to read those.
Yeah.
I know,
sick
Lee and I are like, yes.
But what I do is what I did, because I did stop doing this, I finally retired about a year ago, was pull together anything that's available for all cities and counties in the US. And I'd put together these huge books because the Census Bureau really, and all the agencies stopped publishing in recent years as most data became available online. The printed
Oh.
reports from the government agencies dwindled down to nothing.
Really?
So that when I started producing these books for a publisher about 30 years ago, I thought, oh, well, they won't need me much longer because the agencies will take care of all this. It doesn't need to be put together by a private sector publisher. But in fact, the agency stopped publishing and our books became more in demand,
Mm.
but not so much. I mean, nowadays, people don't buy big, huge books of statistics.
Well, I used to hunt those out in the library for,
Right.
that's the kind of wacko
Yeah.
person I was, and I loved them. Get all kinds of valuable information.
Oh, I love them too. That's why I spent 40 years
I was
putting.
trained as, when you talk about taking surveys, you love surveys. I was trained in survey research
Uh-huh.
and statistics, which I haven't done for ages. But I'm very critical of when I look at other surveys.
Yes.
I get really ticked off when you get a survey that's not really a survey because they're
Mhm.
just looking for a donation.
Yep.
I really get ticked off
I'm the same way.
because it's not really a survey.
But,
Well, we definitely look forward to having you join us.
well, I'm really looking forward to you learning all this stuff that you are working on. It's a lot.
That's great.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre.
Thank you. Community preservation.
I don't have any report at this time. We're going to be meeting at some point to prepare we decided instead of doing one person doing all the presentations for the different articles, we're going to do them how we did them in the past, like I'll present the 2 on housing and so forth. Usually Dawn Marie prepares an outline of exactly what we need to say. So that's our plan for the town meeting, which is in April, something or other. I don't know exactly what the date is, but. So that's
Department
all I
of
have.
Community Development.
Okay, so you probably received that by email. Our CDBG program has a survey issued on SurveyMonkey. But if you could take some time and look at that. I do have paper copies in case anybody doesn't want to take it online with SurveyMonkey. And then the next thing is the short-term rental study. The Affordable Housing Trust has hired UMass Amherst Donahue center to look at our local short-term rental market, maybe even expand it into our seasonal housing.
Could you tell me is there like a really specific definition that I don't know, like what short-term rental is?
It's like Airbnb.
Right.
It's that
so
product.
Are there like,
Vrbo, Airbnb.
right?
So it's something that, realtors
I
used
know
to
that's what it
rent out.
is, but is there like real limits on
Yeah.
time limits and stuff like that?
Some communities are doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're saying, oh, you can't rent out by like the night. You
Mhm.
have to, have at least 3 night stay or something like that.
And they're taxing.
So the market has radically changed, right? It used to be realtors or friends of word of mouth. You would rent a cottage by the week.
Mm-hmm.
Now Airbnb is a platform where you can rent, the units for X amount of days. It's like you're booking it out almost like a motel room.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So we have this study to look at what are the costs of that? Is it hurting the motel industry, right? Is it taking away units that used to be rented year round as year round rentals, right? And what are the benefits, right? It helps pay some of our wastewater bill.
Mm-hmm.
And UMass Amherst is going to help us figure out what are the costs, what are the benefits, and how to, mitigate the costs and amplify the benefits. And so you do that with regulations,
Okay.
zoning. This might be a great place to kick off some type of incentive program to take existing housing and have it be used affordably or at least year round. How much does that cost, right? Because we talked to Mackenzie Perry from the town of
Right.
Provincetown, right?
Yep.
So that was a big fee to get those units that are being used only seasonally into being used year round as year round rentals.
It was expensive,
It was
About
expensive.
$20,000 per unit, something like that.
something like that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was temporary too.
Right, it was only 1 year, but PlaceMate finds that if there's a good tenant in there, the owner just kind of leaves everything the way it is. But there was also a 25% admin fee. Like on top of the fee that's being paid to the property owner to start renting year round, there's a 25% admin fee to get the program administered. It's huge. It's huge money.
Are they continuing that program?
Yep.
The house next to me was sold a year ago and they turned it into an Airbnb. And they lease it like per month or and the people that they've rented it to have been great. But the house sits empty 6 months.
Yeah.
So they're making enough money to cover everything for the year, but it's a shame that you have this house sitting empty. That
There's been a couple of studies that shown that about 3.5 months of Airbnb will pay about the same amount as a 12-month
Yeah.
year-round rental.
I think it
So
was in
that's
the
the
Cape Cod
push
Commission
towards
thing
it.
too, said that,
Yeah.
so.
There are some towns putting in restrictions like you can only rent out Airbnb if it is your full-time residence, so you have to live there,
Ah,
at least half of the year.
yeah.
And you can rent it out for those other 6 months
an
minus a
interesting
day or
All throughout the country.
yeah. So there's lots of different ways towns are tackling this issue. It is something we're gonna have to look at some
It's
point.
very interesting. yeah.
Didn't HAC have a program at one time where they were offering an incentive for people to
It
go?
was similar to what Provincetown was doing, not to the dollar extent.
Right.
But there are definitely programs out there that are trying to push to get people renting year round instead of seasonally.
It's just a shame, 6 months, the house sits empty.
Absolutely.
Well, even for visiting nurses and doctors and things like that. at the
Exactly, yeah,
hospital.
there's gotta be some use that could,
Yeah.
I'm sure if someone contacted the hospital, and sure, we have nurses coming in and doctors or whatever. I just don't know if they would pay the same amount that someone would for an Airbnb or.
Well, I know when I did the last community housing needs assessment for community action, on the islands, they were competing for rentals. The hospitals were competing for rentals with somebody was working with a client who thought they had housing for them, and then the hospital would grab it up because they needed the housing for their staff. So it was such a terrible tight market on the islands. I can't remember if that was in Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard, but they were both pretty bad.
Well, we used to do that at Boston University. We kept furnished apartments aside for situations like this. You got a new hire, someone coming in, you can stay here for 3 months, you know what I mean? But then you have to move along. And of course, people move in for that 3 months, they don't want to move along, so.
Well, I've talked to you about that. I bought a house through the Affordable Housing Deed Restricted Program with HAC in the town of Yarmouth. And I get these mails lately, these hard copy mails. So I want to rent my house out. And I want to send it back to the woman who said, yeah, it would be illegal if I did that. So leave me alone, just stop doing this. And I'm getting one like every 2 weeks from this group.
So UMass Amherst wants to conduct interviews. So I'm so glad you all have opinions. Because that was part of my job today, was to gauge if you would like to be
I
interviewed.
got an opinion because I'm a
Absolutely.
homeowner.
Okay, so put it on your calendar to attend the trust meeting on the 18th at 3 o'clock.
So the trust is what's paying for this,
They're paying
The
for
service.
it. I'm hoping to put it on the agenda from March 18th, 3 o'clock, to have a group interview.
What meeting is this?
The Affordable Housing Trust. Yeah. So the trust definitely, I know the trust definitely wants to be interviewed. And if some of you could come, all of you, you know what I mean, and be part of that. That
Is it a group interview or?
it would be a group, you'd be a focus group.
focus group, yeah.
Like a survey, that's fun, okay.
Be a focus group. But I think, I think that this is, I didn't know if you would be, like, yeah, I don't care about that, but it's,
I
you're
do.
very engaged. Yeah,
Care about it.
good. All right, that made it worth coming into work today. Thank you. Wonderful. That's
I do,
wonderful.
I like, and why I'm saying, I put together surveys and focus groups, I just find them fascinating, people's opinions and how you can twist the question to kind of lead someone where you want them to go,
You're not
unfortunately.
supposed To do that.
No, you're not, but they
You're
do
not
it, but they
supposed to
do it. It is
That's a
done.
bad, it's sad. That's a leading
Done all the
question.
time.
When I did my master's thesis on homeless families, I went to my chair and I had my survey designed and all that, and I said, tell me what you hate about living here. He said, you can't ask that. You can't ask that. Like, think about it. And the thing is that I just said, tell me about it's like living here. And some of the places were so bad. And a couple of people said, it got really ticked off of me for asking that. What do you think? And a couple of really young women says the best place I ever lived, because they came from such terrible
Right.
environments. So if you have a biased question like that, you're not going to leave yourself open for those kinds of answers.
Mhm.
So it was a lesson learned. So I have a little mini assignment for my sociology class. In the chapter on research methods, they have to design this little mini research project. And one person took it off the internet, but that's another story. But they were asking these leading questions, and the question, they asked 3 questions in one, and I said, you can't do that. You have to leave yourself open to what the answer might be. So shame. on
You want an honest,
Yeah.
truthful answer, but when you work for someone else and they tell you, no, we want you to lead the people here.
Well,
it's-
then you're not really doing. the
No, you're
survey.
not, but
Yeah.
it's, like I said, I didn't like
Every now and then I might.
I didn't like
listen to
that
somebody's
survey, but,
just to see how they do it, and they say, this was good, this was terrible. And just because I'm trained in that. And so, anyway, that's my story.
I went to a conference a couple of years ago where the person who is apparently very well respected in the community almost gave a trick question to the people. It was a housing meeting. And the way the question was structured, it was like, what is the most important thing for you? Open space preservation, water quality, or housing? Okay, like either or.
Yeah.
And then, it says, oh, the results are in and, 90% of the people would rather have housing than clean water, I was like.
That's why I don't do surveys.
Mm.
I refuse to do them.
Okay, we have upcoming meetings. We have the MUC meeting number 3 next week from today at 2.
Yep.
And then our committee meeting on April 14th.
Right, and then we gotta add March 18th.
Right.
And what time is that?
At
Three?
3 PM and I'll
Here?
try to get, I'll try to get the hearing room.
This
I'll
room, Mary?
try, yeah, normally we have like room A or B, but we'll try to get the hearing room.
So any other business?
Nope.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Meeting.
I
I
second.
move we adjourn the meeting and Greg seconds.
Okay. Roll call vote, Greg?
Aye.
Drew?
Aye.
Myra?
Aye.
John, aye?
Lee, I.
Josh, aye.
Yeah.
Were we entertaining enough?
So this is.
I
perfect
hesitated.
Because
Yeah,
they,
I just hate shaving.
Yeah.
to the committees
Um,
to look at,
I don't have a
and,
By the Donahue data that I looked at.
daughter and a
Yeah.
Digging into. some
woman
of the
friend of
things
mine
that
that first said,
I
gee, we really